All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I like to give all the honor and praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered abroad. This is the brother Barbazal here with a lesson, and Lord willing, is edifying. All right, and this lesson will be entitled, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest." Right, just going into the recent thing that's been going on, Priest Akai or Hakai, whatever his name is now, pretty much being exposed by his wife, which, hey, the men of GMS, starting with the apostles on down, we've been warning you of these guys, all right, and pretty much everything that's came out on this guy, we've been saying that already and telling you and warning you, not to take heed, to their madness, to their false doctrines, right? We already knew all along that he was never sincere. It was all about money, the status, being seen. It was never really about Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. All right? So this is the book of Luke 8:17. It says, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." And through the spirit, we could already see through a lot of these guys who claim to be prophets, men of the Lord, right? Changing up the doctrine, not going into the MOTB, right? Saying that the heathens can be saved. All along, we've been warning you, against these guys. And what the wife brought out, it pretty much aligns with everything that we've been saying besides, the intimate, details between their relationship, which, that's really none of our business anyway. Anytime we get on these guys, it's about the doctrine. We're not here to, counsel anybody's marriage or anything like that, because that's between the husband and the wife, right? But constantly, right, going back to the main point, this guy has been, leading, Israel astray, right? All the way from Sakari, to Genesis to now the whole TGC ministry thing, right? And when it says, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad," that's the Lord exposing this man, right? Because notice that, not too long after, the guy pretty much does away with the name of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai and says, you can call on Jesus, or says Yeshua, or whatever the case may be. That was pretty much just the, the Lord had enough, right? And those names, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, has exposed you, right? Those names, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, has exposed you to be a false prophet, to be a grifter, right? To be all about money, to be insincere. This guy was never truly a man of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, and this shouldn't be a surprise, all right? Because if you have the true, understanding, you're looking for men that's preaching the word with certain qualities and sincere, not always putting a Cash App in the bio, right? PayPal in the forefront, not constantly asking you for money. And while, tithes is, of course, a part of the law, we're not, making merchandise out of the truth, always asking for tithes at the end of the video, right? Always trying to sell you something, you see? So these are signs of a guy that's insincere, right? So let me get my next precept. This is Proverbs 23:23. It says, "Buy the truth and sell it not. Also wisdom and instruction and understanding," right? So you're supposed to freely give this truth on the highways and hedges, right? It shouldn't be, you shouldn't be charging for Hebrew names, charging for breakdowns, charging for all these things. You should be able to freely give it, and that's what we do in the highways and hedges and the lessons, right? Pretty much any question that a brother may have, we put out videos, You know, you could look up GMS breakdown on this or on this chapter or whatever question you may have. It's very likely that a brother already put out a video, going over that, right? So this thing isn't about money. This thing is about, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, right? Repentance, all right? Exalting those names, salvation, right? And laboring through truth and sincerity, all right? Not being seen, not, putting worldly affairs into the truth, rap music into the truth, going out preaching with snapbacks, having bald heads, and a lot of these guys was hypocrites, and we can see that. This ain't and the Lord is going to continue to expose these guys, all right? And you're going to be able to see that what? A prophet hath been among them. And actually, let me get that real quick. Because that's actually a good chapter, to go into. Ezekiel 33. And we can actually start at 30. It says, or I'll start at, 30. It says, also, thou son of man, the children of thy people still are talking against thee by the walls and at the doors of the houses, and speak one to another, every one to his brother, saying, come, I pray you, and hear what is the word that cometh forth from the Lord. And they come unto thee as the people cometh, and they sit before thee as my people, and they hear thy words, but they will not do them. For with their mouth they show much love, but their heart goeth after their covetousness. And lo, thou art unto them as a very lovely song of one that hath a pleasant voice and can play well on the instrument, for they hear thy words, but they do them not. Yeah, kind. A lot of guys don't take this truth seriously for what it is. GMS, we go out to the highways and hedges and preach, right? And preach about prophecy, right? Going into, the things that, the Lord wants us to go into. That doesn't get the clicks, right? A lot of people are in, they're first to click through, the drama videos or, camp hopping and, things like that. But, they're not truly, they're not truly in this thing, for, to be in the truth, for the salvation, for the milk, for the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. It's always a money grab, status, being on platforms. People think that this is a trend, right? So a lot of these guys, and it's going to be shown that they're not really truly in this thing for what you're supposed to be in it, or for why you're supposed to be in it, right? Ezekiel 33 and 33, and when this cometh to pass, lo, it will come. Then shall they know that a prophet hath been among them. So as time progresses, we're beginning to see who don't got the truth and who got it, right? Who's out here getting exposed for folly, for madness, for being wicked, and those that's being sincere, that's laboring in this truth, bringing out the prophecies, going into the MOTB, right? Constantly being hot, constantly putting forth shows, lessons, right? We're seeing who's truly sincere and who's in this thing for filthy lucre's sake. You see? So this is Romans 16 to 17. It says, now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. And this is why we do that. This is exactly why we mark, right? Put the scopeo, and I'm going to get that word for mark, right? It's not to be confused with charagma, right? But this is just goes to show you that why this is, why we do this. And this is a part of the doctrine, right? You're supposed to mark those that cause divisions, but they say we hating, all this and that and the third, right? The same guy, Hakai, said GMS is hating because I'm riding in the Benz, and that's that's pride. You see? And we knew that this guy was, prideful from the start, all about, the love of money. And we warned you against this guy. You didn't listen. We was hating, why you constantly getting on the different camps, this, that, and the third. And now look, pretty much this guy's been exposed, and, he stepped down, right? This guy has stepped down and pretty much left his followers, to do what? You see? So that just goes to show you that the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, was never really dealing with that guy from the start. So let's get that word for Mark. And this is why it's important to go into the Greek as well, right? Because this is not to be confused with Revelation 13 and 16, right? So this, the word Mark in Romans 16 and 17. And it says, Scopeo, to look at, observe, contemplate, to mark, to fix one's eyes upon, direct one's attention to look to, take heed to thyself, right? Consider, take heed, look at, right? We're telling you to watch this guy and stay away from him. Don't listen to him. Because all along we knew what this guy was about. And now that, what we've been saying all along has, his wife exposed him, all of a sudden it's, people are acting surprised about it, right? When the guy's all about debates and selling you things and, all constantly changing up the doctrine. And the guy said, which his wife said, but, we already have that on record, right? That if he wanted to get rich or he wanted money or whatever, then he would teach, Gentile heathens, right, salvation. He would teach the heathen to be saved, which that's what this guy has done, So I'm gonna get one more precept, and I'm gonna close it out. So this is the book of Luke 9:62. When Yahweh Shai said unto him, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of the Most High. So this guy isn't fit. Guys stepping back, right? Stepping down, walking away, taking a break because they got, exposed or whatever. Both him and Hassad, these guys ain't men of the Lord. They had a whole, group, following them, right? But you kind of constantly, but hey, you supposed to constantly be teaching, which these guys were false prophets anyway. But that just go to show you that these guys are not truly men of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, So I'm going to read that one more time. It says, and Yahweh Shai said unto him, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of the Most High. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that. And Lord willing, that was edifying. So with that, I'd like to give all the honor and praise and glory unto Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem, Ra'ach HaKodash. Shalom.